What's up everyone, this is International Master Eric Rosen and welcome to another video. In this video I'd like to show a very quick game I played just over a week ago. It was at the US Amateur Team Tournament and I was playing against Kameron Tolliver, if I'm saying that correctly, whose rating is just over 2000, and it was kind of a surprisingly quick game given that I was black. I played the Queen's Gambit declined, which isn't known to be the most aggressive opening ever, and I won in 19 moves. So I played some aggressive, kind of enterprising chess, and I'm hoping that viewers can kind of learn a thing or two about how to play aggressively from this game. So the game started out d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3. It actually started out looking to go perhaps into a Nimzo Indian. However, one of the main problems with the Nimzo, and I've played this opening a good number of times over my career, main drawback is that there's a lot of responses for whites. And if I were to play this, I would have to have good knowledge of what to do against every single response with a3, queen c2, knight f3, f3, e3, bishop g5. These are all kind of playable lines with different ideas for white. And normally, if I'm playing someone who I don't know, and I don't know what their opening repertoire might be, then I'll usually stick with openings that I feel more comfortable with. Now, the Nimzo is an opening that I use against players whose games I've studied and know what they typically play. But if I don't know what my opponent will play, I'll usually just play d5 here and keep the game on my own turf. So my opponent played one of the most common variations here. He took on d5, played bishop g5, I play c6, he plays queen c2. And the point of queen c2 is actually to prevent bishop f5. Another main line here for white is to play e3, after which I would have played bishop f5, and we could have entered this line after queen f3, bishop g6, take, 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 and this was a position I was more than willing to go into because I've played this a number of times before, and it's a sort of position which is approximately equal, but I think there's chances for black, especially with the bishop pair, and especially if the position can open up. So I wasn't too concerned about that line. However, let's go back to the game. My opponent played queen c2, and I played a somewhat rare move here. Instead of playing kind of the normal bishop e7 and castling, I decided to be a bit more ambitious, and I played knight a6, which is a move which I've actually prepared in the past. And the idea behind this move is twofold. One, I want to perhaps play knight b4 and harass the queen. And the other idea is to play knight c7, knight e6, and simply maneuver the knight to a useful square in the center. So if my opponent played a3 here, I would have played knight c7, knight e6, and reached some solid position. However, my opponent played e3, and he kind of put me up to the challenge of whether I want to play knight b4, and I went ahead, attacked the queen. And the point is I want to kind of drive the queen off this diagonal so I can develop my bishop to f5. So he played the most normal looking move, queen b1. And then if I don't have my next move, then this whole knight a6, knight b4 idea probably makes no sense. But my next move makes this possible. I played pawn g6. And the idea is setting up bishop to f5. And white is already in kind of a awkward situation where he has to figure out how exactly to deal with the threat of bishop f5 coming. Now there's a couple of moves for white in this position, one of which I have very, very deep preparation against, that move being a3. And without getting too much into the kind of details of this move, I will say that bishop f5 is a response, and after e4 things get very complicated, but I'll probably save this analysis for another video because things get very, very complex. I will say the other move here is queen d1, probably the best move. And if I play bishop to f5, then white can play rook c1. And what's essentially happened is I can't really exploit my setup any way further because white has both d3 and c2 under control, and white's planning to play a3 next. So if this were to happen, I would play a5, and then after a3, knight a6, and it would be a game where I've kind of included this weird move g6, but the idea for black now is to play knight c7 to e6, like I mentioned before, probably bishop e7 and castle, and it would be a fairly dynamic position. So what happened in the game was he played pawn f3. I played h6, and I kick his bishop back, and then I play bishop f5. And what I'm doing is basically forcing him to play e4. There's really no other move here he can play. And when he plays e4, he's opening up the center and making his king a bit weaker. And this is very relevant to what happens in just a few moves, where the center is going to open up and his king is going to be left wide open. So I take, he takes, and I take on d4. And this is essentially a piece sacrifice, where I'm allowing him to win a minor piece, basically. He takes on f6, I take, and he takes. Now, he went into this without too much thought, and I should note that he was playing very quickly in the opening. And the problem with this is I think he just made a misjudgment. He thought that perhaps that he's up a piece, he should have some good chances here to maybe survive, maybe even get the advantage. But the problem is that white's position is terrible. The only good thing is white has an extra knight, but there's so many bad things about white's position. Mainly, white is completely behind in development. I mean, most of the pieces are still on the back rank. And secondly, the black pieces are going to come to life incredibly quickly. I'm ready to play bishop c5, castle queenside, and put my rooks on d8 and e8. The two open files. And meanwhile, white's development is going to be very slow because it's not going to be easy for white to castle either way. And the game ended very, very quickly. I ended up castling queenside. He played knight f3. I played bishop c5. And after I get kind of the ideal placement for my pieces, it's not entirely clear how white solves any of the problems. He can't castle kingside, obviously, because my bishop on c5. So he played the move king f1. And now in this position, I think my next move allowed me to win the game without really any further effort. Now I would encourage the viewers to pause the video and try and come up with the next move here for black. And I will say that the next move is not the easiest move to find, because black's pieces seem perfect, but you want to look for a way to improve your position further. So the move I played was queen e7, with a very simple idea of wanting to play queen e3, and maybe the not so simple idea of threatening knight d5 and taking advantage of the fact that his knight is tied down to defending the bishop. So after queen e7, white's under serious pressure. I was actually expecting him to play queen c1, preventing queen e3, but allowing knight d5, and this would be winning for black. Instead, he chose a very surprising move, which, okay, in this case, probably every move is losing for whites, but he played the very strange-looking knight g1, and then after queen e3, I guess his idea was to play knight h3, defend f2, but then I played rook d2, and after a short think, he resigned, seeing that, okay, there's pretty much no defense to mate or serious loss of material for white. So I hope people can maybe draw a few lessons from this game. I think the most important lesson is the fact that material isn't always the most important factor in a position, and especially in this game, the position essentially centered around development and attack, and that was much more valuable for black than material. So I hope people enjoyed this game. Feel free, if you have any questions, leave some comment in the video, and I'll do my best to respond. Also, if you have any suggestions for topics of future videos you'd like to see covered, feel free to send me a message or leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video.